What is up? Happy Wednesday. Welcome on into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabbar here with Jared Smith. Lots to talk about today, Jared. How are you doing, first of all? We're getting into the weekend. It's like halfway through the week. There is no Thursday night football tomorrow, which is kind of a Debbie Downer, but we do have quite a few college basketball games, NBA games, and then a couple NHL games on the slate. But most exciting, golf. Back tomorrow, the first PGA event of the year. 2022 starts tomorrow. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, in lovely Hawaii, we were going back and forth whether or not that's on the West Coast or not. I guess
Asking
it's
each one
not.
of our guests today about this because this is a debate. Just like Reed and Red Receipts yesterday,
That's right.
Hawaii is not considered the West Coast.
What is it? The Pacific Rim? I get. Is that like? I
It's
guess
just Hawaii.
it's just Hawaii. There's no region. Like usually you say East Coast, Midwest, Southwest, West Coast. I don't know. It's fair enough. I'm not a geography major, but I will say this: the Texas Bowl last night, swing and a miss with my LSU lean. They were god awful, just absolutely terrible on offense. But I'll be honest, I probably would still make that bet again. Anytime the line moves through key numbers, I would make the bet again. Nice job though, because you were on Kansas State early and you got a really good line. And that was the pick of the day with Kansas State because they were really never in doubt to cover that from the jump. Great night of college basketball. How about our guy Jim Root coming on the show, popping winners? Sharp Cheddar Jim gives out NC State plus 9.5. They went outright on the road in Blacksburg. Nice win for Lipscomb, under the radar game. And then Air Force, he didn't know it at the time, but Air Force was actually missing either one or two of their best players because of some COVID issues, and they still covered at Rado State. We kind of split the bill with our hockey picks too. Not great, but not terrible. Rado won in overtime. The Ducks did win in regulation, and your Jets took care of the Yotes. So I think it was a good night.
We have a whole segment on this, Jared. You're jumping the gun.
Oh, well, you know me. I get loose-lipped at this time of the day.
All right, we got a lot to talk about today. College basketball predictions. Jared is on 3 different games tonight. I'm on 1. The line's moving like crazy right now. We're going to get into it. We have the Sentry Tournament of Champions. We'll have Will Gray on from NBC Sports Betting Edge to talk about it. NBA with Adam Ronis, the first ever 2-guest show, and I'm really excited about it. NHL Ice Picks. I'm on a couple of games tonight. We recap our picks from last night, and then we can't end without our Pickswise 3-star play of the day and our best bets of the day. So without further ado, my friend, let's get into it and let's bet it. College basketball predictions. A lot of games on the slate tonight. One of the biggest ones, Texas Tech taking on Iowa State at Iowa State. Now, yesterday, I locked in my bet at Iowa State -1. Like 2 seconds ago, the line just moved to Iowa State laying 4. What do you see from that?
Yeah, this is the sauna pick of the day. Very steamy towards Iowa State. So if you like the steam, if you like to fade the steam, which, tends to be the more prudent option, you get a chance now to come back on Texas Tech +4, considering this number open as a pick 'em. That's a pretty nice kind of middle situation there. But I was able to grab Iowa State laying 2 this morning. And the reason why, like literally right before the show, I had 2.5 and then I saw 2, I cashed it out and I got in on the 2 because this line has been kind of jumpy. And the reason is Terrence Shannon, who's Texas Tech's best player, is not playing in this game because of an ankle injury. And when we look at the big picture of this game, Iowa State, listen, both these teams are really good in the Big 12. I mean, these are 2 top-notch Big 12 teams. The part that worried me, even with Terrence Shannon in the game, let's say Terrence Shannon was playing and this line was a pick 'em or, Iowa State maybe laying 1, Tech still turns it over a ton on 20% of their possessions this year. And they're facing a very stingy Iowa State defense in this game. That's 7th in defensive efficiency. Now, Texas Tech's got a great defense too, 10th in efficiency, but they can be beat on the 3-point line. And that's where I think this game will be decided. Now, Iowa State's not a sharp shooting 3-point team. They actually had one of their worst performances of the season against Baylor the other day, 1 out of 14 from the arc, but they still covered that game against Baylor, who's one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country. So I think Iowa State at home, Hilton Arena, it's going to be rocking tonight. Big time Big 12 game. Texas Tech, they've been to the national championship very recently. But again, short-handed Red Raiders tonight. So that's why I'm going to lay it with the Cyclones.
Yeah, I honestly thought when Iowa State was only laying 1 that they were kind of underrated by the market at home. I think laying 4 is a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Fair value.
Thank you. Fair value for them at home. But you look at what Texas Tech has been able to do this season. They've had a weaker schedule. I think that they were
Yeah.
overvalued in a game like this. But the Cyclones, they've outshot Xavier, they've outshot Memphis, they've outshot Creighton and Iowa this season. They've had a pretty tough schedule, and they've still been able to be very, very successful. So I really like Iowa State laying 1 in the spot. I would still take it with them laying 4 as well. I think that they're going to win by at least 4.5, 5 points.
You're right about the schedule. They're one of the easiest schedules in the country.
Yeah.
You're right.
You have a couple other college basketball bets heading into tonight, right? Northwestern, UNC. You like both of those?
Yeah, I think Northwestern is the one that I'm really interested in because, and I know I'm crazy fading my Nittany Lions here, but I mean, they had a lights out shooting performance against Indiana, 11 out of 22 from the arc, and they still only won by 3 and only scored 61 points. So I tend to fade teams that are coming off of just way, over the top shooting performances that are way above what their metrics tend to, show. And Penn State hasn't won a road game this year. This is a true road game in a different time zone, at a gym that they don't go to a whole lot in Northwestern. That's kind of a tough gym to play at. And Northwestern's got decent numbers. I mean, they're top 60 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. That makes them one of the better teams in the country. They don't beat themselves. 3rd in turnover percentage, 10th in non-steal turnover percentage, which is a very key metric I like to look at. It means how many turnovers do you, give up? How many times do you, turn the ball over when the other team isn't stealing it? Meaning, throwaways or, mental errors that lead to turnovers. Non-steal turnover percentage is something you are going to hear a lot of on this show as we get into the knee-deep, the gritty of college football season. And Northwestern's coming off a tight game against Michigan State where they shot 5 of 24 from 3. They didn't cover that game by about a bucket, but they were in it with Sparty. And I think Northwestern's a little underrated. We've seen the line move from 4, now 5.5. And they've covered 3 straight prior to that game against Michigan State. So they're playing pretty well against the number. And then the steam is certainly favoring the Wildcats here. I don't love fading my home team, but I'm always objective when I'm talking about Penn State. I will tell you when it's a good spot for them. Yeah. I will tell you when it's a bad spot for them. This is not a good spot for Penn State.
That's
off of a win where they shot really well.
That's what we appreciate about you. Keep it real. You're real.
Keeping it real.
Yeah. What else you got tonight?
I don't love this. So of the 3 picks we gave out, Iowa State, Northwestern, I think UNC for me is probably 3rd on the list. I did put a full unit on all 3 of these, but if I had to rank them, if you wanted to only bet one game tonight, I'll tell you what that one game is later. But if you wanted to leave one off the card, I think UNC would be the one I would leave off the card. Now, the Heels are pretty good from the arc this year, 7th in 3-point shooting. Yeah. And they haven't been higher than 84th in the last 8 years. So this is an uncharacteristically good shooting UNC team. Now, their backcourt of Caleb Love and RJ Davis, that's the reason why. They're playing this 2-guard backcourt, which has been very solid this year. They're 30th in EFG percentage, effective field goal percentage, which kind of, weights your 3-point shooting against your 2-point shooting. So they're a top 30 shooting team in the country, and they're facing a Notre Dame team that's 120th in defensive efficiency. So this is a Notre Dame team certainly that can be scored on. Notre Dame won their last 2 games, but they didn't cover either, and they're 2-9 against the spread this year. So I don't love laying points on the road, but to me, UNC, if it's 2.5, under that, key-ish number of 3, I would do a 1-possession win for UNC tonight, even though it's tough to lay points on the road against Mike Bray.
A couple more stats before we move on to NHL. Iowa State 9-4 against the spread at home, and the under is hit in 8 of the last 13 games for Iowa.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So
college basketball totals are tough. College basketball totals are tough.
Yeah. What would you bet? Would you bet this total at all for Iowa State?
No, but I am interested in college basketball totals because I think unlike spreads, they can be a little more, true to the movement.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, if you're betting an under in college basketball, you're not going to be comfortable.
Alex has done that a couple times. Alex has done it a couple times. He's like, I'm getting the under sweats. You
will not be comfortable from the opening tip. Whereas in a spread game, especially if it's a 2 or 3 possession spread like UNC 2.5, Iowa State 2, even Northwestern at 5.5, you could be down at halftime and still cover that. Where in the totals world, very difficult to make up ground because it tends to be kind of on pace, on schedule with where the timing of the game is.
Alex Glaze bet the under the other day with the Purdue-Wisconsin game, and he texted me probably like 3 minutes into the game. I think the score was like 4-2 or 4-0. I don't even know who was up at the time. And he texted me and he said, I hate that I bet the under in this game because I'd have to watch it for the next hour until Monday Night Football comes on. I'm like, oh my God.
Very tough.
Why do you do that to yourself? Why?
Unders are tough.
Yeah,
Unders are tough.
do
I don't bet a ton of unders in basketball. It's just not something I do. Or hockey, frankly.
Yeah, speaking of hockey, let's take it to the ice. Recap yesterday's picks. You did it a little bit. You won a pretty big parlay, didn't you?
Yeah, the Ducks. Quack, quack, baby. In regulation against the Flyers. The Flyers are a straight fade right now, especially on the road. And the Ducks have kind of been, I don't know, they've kind of been a little bit like streaky this year. So if you catch them at a good streak, they're an undervalued team because they're not a team that the books really put in too high regard. But they can be very streaky. We saw what they did. I think they won like 10 or 11 straight games earlier this year, but then they lost a bunch in a row. So you got to kind of catch the Ducks at the right time. And we had it was a good spot for Anaheim last night.
Yeah, I won one of my 3 bets, unfortunately. But I will say, even though I didn't win my Avs puck line bet, I don't know if you saw that goal from Carr to win in overtime against Chicago Blackhawks last night. It was like there's not enough adjectives to describe how disgusting that was. Dirty, filthy. Oh, it was just like, how is he capable of doing something like that? Do you want me to tell you why? Because he's Cale Makar and he's going to win he's going to win the Norris Trophy this year. Like, I just think that he deserves it. That was sick. That was absolutely sick.
Tough game though, because they blew a lead. I thought we were good with the puck line in the first period. They were up 2-0.
Yes, me too. And then you see like 5 minutes left in the third and the score's 3-3. I'm like, what happened?
They were down in that game too. Rado had to come back and tie it late. Good game. The Blackhawks are another one of those teams that they should be better. Their record and their goal differential is brutal this year.
And the players that they have, they have
good players.
Yeah, they have Fleury and net. They have guys like Patrick Kane. They have a good squad. It's just all coming together. I think it was a lot of off-ice issues that kind of trailed into the season. But once you start to build that chemistry, they can definitely be a good team that could be up there in the standings and possibly make the postseason. I don't know about this year. We'll see what happens. But the Winnipeg Jets came in strong for me against
good pick there.
Coyotes. 1-2, cash that ticket. There's a couple NHL games tonight. Tomorrow's going to be a really big NHL night. We'll give you a lot of hockey bets tomorrow. You're not on any games tonight, right? I am. So Oilers, Maple Leafs. I have the Leafs 3-way money line at -145. Not necessarily. I know, not necessarily the best value. I like my plus money bets, but at the same time, the Oilers are trying to snap a 4-game losing streak right now. They've lost 10 of their last 12 games, 5 of their last 6 road games. They're averaging 3.3 goals per game right now, giving up 3.24 goals per game. They gave up 4 last game to the Rangers, and you look at their last 4 games, they've given up 17 goals in 4 games. Not great when you look at the overall spread. The Maple Leafs are on the 3-game winning streak. They're averaging 3.35 goals per game, scored 5 goals in each of the 4 of their last 5 games. 5 goals in 4 of their last 5 games. I should just say that. And they're also one of the biggest defensive teams in the league. They're giving up less than 2.5 goals per game, only giving up 10 goals in their last 4. So when you're scoring basically like 20 goals in 4 of your last 5 games while also giving up 10, you're going to win a lot of games doing that. I just expect the Oilers to struggle offensively in this game. The Maple Leafs still coming out strong. But I don't like it enough to take the puck line for this game. So that's why I'm taking the Leafs 3-way money line -145. I was trying to find like an outside edge of why I want to take the Oilers in this game, and I couldn't do it from the bottom of my heart. So.
These games have been weird at times. And I'll be honest, the total, like the Canadian matchups can be tough sometimes, because there's a lot of, intrinsic rivalry involved in the Canadian rivalries. But the total did drop a little bit actually from 6.5 to 6. Really? No real movement on the money line. I saw Westgate moved like 10 cents off the opener of 220, which is not really that significant at all. But I did see, anytime the total drops 6.5, now I'm seeing 6, pretty much market wide. That's noteworthy. The other game I've seen no movement at all. 6 open, still total of 6 is the Blues and the Pens.
Yeah, I'm betting that. My best bet of the day, so I'll give out that bet a little bit.
All right, fair enough.
This is one of those spots too where it's really tough because a lot of these teams are still coming back from their COVID pause, and they're still getting their legs underneath them. They're still getting their lungs inside of them, and that's a tough spot to, stop. A lot of teams not playing since December 16th, 17th, 18th. and then coming back and expecting to have that same chemistry. I mean, it's a tough spot for a lot of these teams to be in, and it's a tough spot to bet. And that's why I haven't necessarily put on a full unit for a lot of these bets. I'm doing like a half a unit for a lot of these just until like the next week and a half or so, 10 days, see how things develop with these teams chemistry wise. What do you think?
I think that's a very reasonable and prudent approach.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, like, how much do you bet on games? And I rarely tell them the amount, but the unit size is, in my opinion, more important than what you bet on every night. How you risk manage your bankroll is going to make you feel good or bad at the end of each night. Sometimes it's frustrating. Like, there are nights when we gave up 5 or 6 picks on a show and the play of the day is the one loser and everything else wins, and you put more on the play of the day than you do the other one, so you feel worse. But my advice is, and this is true for me, even if I'm giving out a play of the day, most of the time it is still a unit bet. It's just the one pick that I like the most out of the unit bets. I had a conversation with a very sharp handicapper who I trust maybe more than any other handicapper in the world. And he said, no matter what, how strongly you feel about a pick, every bet you make should be 1 unit, period, end of story. Even no half units. Like, even if you make the bets that you don't feel great about, any bet you make should be 1 unit. Now, that's one approach. There's others. But the unit sizing, to me, we can do a whole show on it. It's a very important part of how we handle the day-to-day grind of betting. Maybe
we'll do a specialty show on that sometimes. From the ice, though, we take it to the court. Let's bring in Adam Ronis, senior fantasy and betting analyst for Fantasy Alarm and Pickswise. Adam, how the heck are you doing today?
Doing well. Glad to join you guys once again.
We're excited to have you. Before we start into the NBA segment, I just have a full-on off-topic question for you, because Jared and I were having a debate this morning.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there's a golf tournament going on in Hawaii on the West Coast. And I'm like, Hawaii is not considered the West Coast, right?
Yeah, I don't consider it the West Coast.
All right, fair enough.
It's its own entity, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, Jared. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Adam. You're never coming back on the show after today. This is it. You're done.
I'll get back on your good side with something else.
Fair enough.
So first of all, before we get into NBA, Kyrie Irving set to make his debut tonight for the season. Now he's going to be playing half the games. He's not allowed to play, obviously, in New York because of their vaccine mandate indoors. But what are you expecting from him coming back to the Nets tonight and being able to be, I guess, a part-time player for the team?
Yeah, I think this whole scenario is going to be very interesting because we haven't seen anything like it before. It seems like the team is welcoming him back. They're coming off a couple disappointing performances. Durant was pretty pissed after the loss a couple games ago, and then they came back and they lose once again to the Grizzlies. Mm-hmm. So they need to get back on the winning track and get Kyrie acclimated to the team. So I expect him to play well, but again, this is just something we haven't seen before, and it's going to be weird because most of the time you want home court advantage in the playoffs. Does Brooklyn want it? Because that hurts them. They're not going to have Kyrie there. So
you're only having someone play games when you're having someone play games when it matters, but they can't play the full series. That has to impact the team, not in a great way.
Yeah, no, I can't think it's a positive. You're going to have different game plans, and especially for the opponents as well. So I wonder if anything changes. It doesn't seem like these laws are, even with new mayor
in New York.
Yeah, it's not going to change. So it's a very different situation, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Nets adjust to it.
Yeah, and not to go totally off the topic, but the French Open's going to deal with it soon with Novak Djokovic. The Australian Open's dealing with it right now with the the waivers and all the rule bending that's going on. Yeah, it's fascinating what is kind of transpiring with these athletes that are multi-million-dollar transformational figures in their sports, and they're having to kind of deal with the rules just like the rest of us are. All right, one of tonight's games that really interests me is the Bucks and the Raptors. Bucks are coming off of a hideous loss to the Pistons. Now they're favored in this game, obviously, against Toronto, north of the border, but the line's kind of shortening a little bit towards the Raptors, and the Raptors have been playing well. They've won 3 in a row. Am I crazy for thinking this is a bounce back spot for the Bucks, or is Toronto going to keep this game close?
No, it's not crazy to think that. I mean, that was stunning to see the Bucks lose the other day to Detroit. I mean, that's not what you expect. Maybe they don't cover, but for them to lose straight up, especially since Detroit's been shorthanded, I know they've gotten Sadiq Bey's played very well and Diallo's played very well. But that was certainly surprising. I mean, Raptors are on a back-to-back. They didn't need everyone last night. Fred VanVleet is playing amazing right now. They've gotten back a lot of their guys. So, I could see it being a competitive game, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee bounces back and covers this number. Middleton had missed some time due to a personal issue, but they pretty much have everyone back now. And this is a big test for Toronto because they have been playing very well.
That Pistons game, I think the Pistons had like 10 or 11 players in health and safety protocols during that game against the Bucks. So COVID has really taken a toll on a lot of the NBA teams right now. I know the Atlanta Hawks dealt with it pretty badly. The Nets dealt with it pretty badly, but it's going around the league right now. How do you still find value when it comes to picking player props when you don't even necessarily know the day of the game who's going to be in that night because things change so rapidly and so quickly?
Yeah, it's made it more difficult to pick sides and totals early in the day because every time you think you like something, you get some news that players are out. So that's been the frustrating part. So I really wait on that. I did put money on a prop last night. It's Kyle Kuzma because he's played extremely well lately. That's another team that's missing some players. Dinwiddie has been out, and Kuzma has just played extremely well the last 4 games. He's averaging, 20 plus points. And his prop has gone up accordingly. The other day I played it at 18.5. It's 19.5. I saw late last night, but he scored 22, 25, 29, and 36 over the last 4 games, taking at least 17 shots from the field in each of those games. And his rebounding prop too. He has at least 10 rebounds in 5 of the last 6 games. So when you see that players are out, others are getting the performance, is getting the opportunity, and those the market is not right. I mean, Malik Monk is another guy that's been in the starting lineup for the Lakers. He went over his prop easily last night. It was 16.5. He finished with 24. So I think that's where you can get the advantage right now. In the same game, Bradley Beal is another guy you could look at. I think points, rebounds, assists is 42.5. He's at 49, 45, 50, and 46 the last 4 games. He's played 43 minutes the last 2 games. And they got the Rockets tonight. It's a great matchup. Rockets are 3rd in pace, 29th in defensive efficiency. And the Wizards themselves are not good. They're 23rd in defensive efficiency. So I think right now what you can do is you can take advantage of the player prop market more so than the sides and totals, at least early in the day. As the day goes along, you'll see some picks that you like. But, it's getting a little bit better. Guys are coming back quicker. But there's just too many days. And I do some DFS content as well. I've written up articles early in the day, like when the Miami game was canceled and I had 3 Miami guys in the values.
Yeah, it happens. Pace, defensive efficiency. Speaking my language here, Adam, definitely, no doubt. So I think one of the games I want to talk about is this Miami-Portland game. Portland opened as a 1-point favorite, and now it's flipped. Miami now is a favorite in this game. Portland obviously without McCollum, without Lillard. Miami's without a ton of guys too. Do you think the Heat can go on the road tonight? I love these line flips when the market kind of switches sides on who the favorite in the game is. You think the Heat are a good bet tonight on the road?
Yeah, I lean more towards the Heat. I mean, this Portland team is just a disaster. I mean, it's just falling apart so quickly. And it doesn't look like Lillard's going to play. I don't think he's officially been ruled out yet, but it doesn't sound good. So, Miami still has enough. Tyler Hero obviously can get the job done. He's the leading favorite for 6th man of the year. I think it's minus 300 last time I checked.
Wow.
So they still have enough to get it done. But Duncan Robinson's still out. But I think Miami's just a little bit better. Even on the road, I think they should be able to beat Portland.
Yeah, I watched Portland in depth the other night when they played the Atlanta Hawks. And basically, they don't defend at all. Like there was some times where guys were just driving the lane and it was like a wide open lane. Like I feel like guys were still sitting on the bench that were on the court. Like I'm like, where is
LJ could have scored a bucket in that lane.
Nobody in the paint right now. There was no defense whatsoever. So that was pretty crazy to watch. I think that Miami, he's going to pick apart their team one by one. You're on a couple games tonight, right? Wow. Wizards, Rockets. Try to say that 5 times fast. And Thunder Wolves, yeah?
Yeah, I like the Thunder here. The Thunder have actually been one of the most profitable teams against the spread this year at 23-13. They're going to get back Gilgeous-Alexander tonight. Josh Giddey has been one of the top rookies. And they they seem to stay competitive. It's weird because they're a team that is rebuilding and they obviously have a lot of draft picks, but they find a way to stay competitive in games. And Minnesota being favored by 8 just seems like way too many points for me. Right? I mean, I know they might get back Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell tonight, but I can't give up 8 with them. So I think the Thunder can keep it competitive. Like I said, I like some of the props for the Wizards. I'm interested to see how the Rockets respond with Christian Wood coming off the suspension and Kevin Porter Jr.
Weird situation there, huh?
Crazy.
Yeah, very weird. Because that's another team that got off to the brutal start this year and then started to be competitive. But I'm surprised Porter only got 1 game, especially with his history and throwing things at the coach. So I'm interested to see how they respond tonight. Are they going to show up with a chip on their shoulder, or are they a team that just says, yeah, whatever, we don't care right now?
I mean, I would lean to the latter there, because teams that are out of the playoff race, teams that know that they're not really playing for much, they're just kind of going through the motions. I would put Houston certainly in that category. I'm curious, Adam, because you talk about Towns and Russell coming off of the COVID list. And we saw this, again, cross-sport, comparisons here with Carson Wentz over the weekend coming off the COVID list, didn't practice all week, didn't play well against the Raiders. They lost the game. Is there something to maybe fading some of the line movement because, a Towns or a Russell come back, the line moves in favor of the T-Wolves, but those guys really aren't fully 100% maybe because maybe their lungs aren't back to full strength, or maybe they're out of rhythm a little bit. They didn't practice all week. So is there hidden value with actually fading the line movement that goes towards a team getting some players back from COVID?
Yeah, I think the tricky part that I found across all sports, specifically NFL, is we're not made aware exactly how bad the symptoms are with some of these players. Yeah. We're kind of guessing, or sometimes it leaks out. We had heard Amari Cooper was dealing with some effects, Tyler Lockett, but for a lot of guys, we haven't. With Carson Wentz, I just think he needed a week of practice. He's the quarterback. Clearly showed.
Carson needs practice, no doubt about that.
and it clearly showed during the game. But yeah, some of these guys are not, especially running up and down the court.
100%.
It's going to take some time. So I think in their cases, yeah, you certainly could look at that and realize that it could take some time. But then again, Anthony Edwards came back the other night and had a big game. It didn't bother him. So it's different with each individual. And unfortunately, at least from the reporting I've seen, we're not getting great detail on who's really been suffering with symptoms and who hasn't.
I know it really is crazy. And you don't know until the media talks to them after the fact when they were like, yeah, I had no symptoms, or yeah, it really knocked me out.
And look, yesterday, Julius Randle, he came back and had one of his best games of the year.
He did. And he hadn't been playing well before.
Right.
Which makes it even more almost and I think that speaks to just how difficult handicapping sports are in these uncertain times. I mean, there are so many variables, so many more variables to consider. And in our minds, we're trying to weigh, what should be weighted more in terms of the handicap. And it's tough right now, no doubt. There's no easy way to put it.
No, it really is. That's why I've been leaning more on the NBA player props lately. I just feel like that market, especially, for a while I was riding Tyrese Halliburton when the Kings were shorthanded.
Yeah.
His points were so low. So you just got to find the teams. The Pacers had a couple guys like Washington. His prop was like 12.5 points. He went over it. So I think that's what you can do right now is look at the teams that are a little shorthanded. Who are the guys filling in, getting higher usage rates? And what are their props at? Because I think that's where the markets have been slow to adjust.
Yeah. One more from the chat before we let you go, Adam. 76ers at Orlando Magic. Sixers laying 7.5. With the Magic's Cole Anthony questionable tonight. Thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, I never trust the Sixers with big numbers, and we saw it the other day, but this line has come down. And Orlando is missing a lot of people. I would probably still go Philly here. Again, I don't feel great about this. The Magic coming off a couple of losses, but the Sixers are just better, and I don't see how they're going to stop Embiid. So I would lean towards the Sixers. It's not like this is a 14. It's below double digits, so I would lean the Sixers here.
A little steam on Philly too, 7.5 to 8.5. I see on the open. So Philly would be the early money play.
Adam, thank you so much for coming on. Adam Ronis, senior fantasy and betting analyst for Fantasy Alarm, and right here for us at Pickswise. We appreciate it, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks when we have you back on.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, from NBA we head to the golf course because we have the first tournament of 2022. Will Gray, golf betting analyst for NBC Sports Edge Betting. Will, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Lauren. We need to jump in here, and I need to pile on with Jared. We can have all these geographic discussions you want. We can talk about, is Pittsburgh in the Midwest? Is Reno in the Pacific Northwest? But the West Coast stops at the actual line in the West.
All right.
Different. It's going to be a fun week, but they're a whole different time zone. Anyway,
fair enough.
With you guys, nice to see you.
It's good to see you too, Will.
Honestly,
great start. You're off to a great start here on the show.
Yeah. That was going to be my first question to you. So I appreciate that we just got that out of the way right out of the top. And now we can actually get into golf. So we have the first tournament of 2022, Sentry Tournament of Champions, which couldn't be in a better place. Maui, Hawaii. Like, come on now. First of all, how excited are you to get the first tournament of the year going?
Yeah, well, golf doesn't really have a robust offseason. So it's only been a few weeks since we've seen a lot of these guys. But it is good to get, anytime you see the pictures and the beauty shots from Maui, you see the humpback whales going, you're like, okay, now it's time. Wild card weekend's around the corner, and now it's time to start thinking golf. But this is always a great place to start the year. It's all of the tournament winners from last year. So it's the smallest field we're going to see until the Tour Championship in late August, early September. So you're going to have some shorter prices this week, but there's still likely some value in there.
So par 73, which I always find fascinating. It'll help my game a little bit because it's one less over par once I get to the end of the end of the course, right? But does the added length of the course, and also, frankly, from what I'm reading, relatively easy conditions, wide fairway, soft greens, as long as there's no wind, this seems like a Bombers type of course, a course that some of the better golfers can certainly take advantage of with some low scores.
Definitely a Bombers course. You mentioned par 73, so there's an extra par 5. These are the widest fairways that guys are going to see all year long. And you're right, the wind is the primary defense at Kapalua. And the forecast this week seems to be there's not going to be a lot of wind. So we could absolutely see a winning score maybe in the 25 to 30 under par range. Would not be entirely unexpected. Even though it's a par 73, most of these guys are going to go out and shoot, 67, 68 is going to be the barometer of did you have a good day? So, driving accuracy is not going to be an issue. It's going to be more about the greens. These are huge greens, very undulating. So you want to lean on, target their approaches. People that are good with their long irons, strong with their wedges. You need to be able to hit it inside that 10 or 15-foot circle because everyone's going to be coming in from 110, 120 yards with some regularity.
I look at a guy like Brooks Koepka, who obviously has a huge media presence, especially between him and Bryson DeChambeau. But Brooks is not even in the top 10 as a favorite for the Sentry Tournament of Champions. Do you think bigger names like that need a little bit more love from the sports books, or do you see more guys like Justin Thomas, John Rahm having a better chance of winning a tournament like this?
I think Brooks, we've gotten to the point where we have to start believing him, where he spent the last couple of years telling us he only cares about the majors. I only get my game up for like 5 or 6 weeks. This is not one of those weeks. So I think the books are saying, okay, we're going to take him at his word. We know he's had, somewhat of an offseason. We haven't really seen him since the hit and giggle with Bryson over Thanksgiving. So I think that it's something where you're going to be able to get some value on him as we get into the season. But he's someone that does need to play his way into the mix. He deals with health and injury issues with some regularity. So you figure, all right, I want to see him in action before I really, put the hammer down on him. I do think Justin Thomas deserves to be the favorite. He's won here twice before, finished third on 2 other occasions. 8, 9 to 1. It's a pretty short price for me to get involved in pre-tournament, potentially a live or in-tournament play could be worth a nibble. But I really like Xander Schauffele. This is a guy that when you talk about limited field events, Xander is always at the top of the list. 3 of his 4 PGA Tour wins have come in small fields. When you are guaranteed 4 rounds against smaller competition, it's actually 4 out of 5 if you include last year's Olympic gold medal, and that's what got him into this tournament. But it's been 3 years since he had an official PGA Tour win. It came at this course 3 years ago. So absolutely someone that in that 12-1 range, I see him at plus 250 for a top 5 finish. I really like that price because remember, there's only 38 players in this field. We had Cameron Champ already withdraw because of COVID. So we're down from 39 to 38. A top 10 or a top 5, you think that that's going to take a lot, but really you only need to beat a few guys considering the bottom 5 to 10 of this field are really just happy to have a free ticket to Maui.
I would certainly be on that list. Free ticket to Maui. Well, the no cut, nuance is always fascinating to me with these tournaments. It leads me more towards the top guys because I know that even if they have one bad round, they're still going to be around on Sunday. Does the no cut situation, which we do see pop up a couple times throughout the season on tour, it is a fascinating, again, nuance to kind of handicap. How does that impact your picks this week?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when you get to a no-cut event like this, like the WGC events, the cream is eventually going to rise to the top because, if you're a guy like Xander or Justin Thomas and you look at the stats and they say that, they're a stroke or a stroke and a half better than the average on the tour across every round, eventually that's going to catch up and they're going to get their head out in front. And it's also something with a small field where that you're not really going to shoot yourself out on Thursday with a mediocre round because you only have, again, a handful of guys you really need to get past if you get back into the top 5 or the top 10. So that's why I think sometimes we've seen some shockers back, 10, 15 years ago. There are definitely some curveball winners at this event. Even last year, Harris English was not someone that was on a lot of people's radar for this tournament. But I think more often than not, you see guys that have won here before or have played here 3, 4, 5 times because this is a course that it does take some getting used to. It is probably, outside of Augusta National, the hardest golf course to walk. The elevation at Kapalua is no joke. These guys, their legs are going to be feeling it by Saturday and Sunday. So even if you have someone like Patrick Cantlay, who won the FedEx Cup last year, he has not played a stroke play event since the Tour Championship. So, I know that he played the Ryder Cup, but that's not quite the same. So he might take a round or two to kind of get his legs under him and really feel his game before he's going to maybe make a move over the weekend.
Great stuff.
Okay, I want to talk about majors for a second, just moving into the future. How early are you betting some of these tournaments? Like, do you see any value betting weeks, months in advance, or do you kind of wait until you see, how people are doing in tournaments previous?
I think much like golf in general, there's the Masters and then there's everything else. Yes. I think if you want to get ahead of a futures market, the Masters is the one to do it. I'm not rushing to be like, I need to get down on Sam Burns for the PGA Championship right now. But the Masters is one where, because you have so much course history, the guys that are going to be able to play well. What are some of the indicators as you get into February and March of like, okay, this is what we usually see. Players that are going to play well at the Masters, they pop up eventually on the floor to swing. They get a top 10. They get an early win. So when you see guys start to tick some of those boxes, you say, okay, maybe I want to grab a piece of them, a few weeks out. Or conversely, depending on where you're shopping, you can get a good price in the Masters for a guy that is not yet qualified, that maybe has to work his way in. Someone like Ricky Fowler, who I don't necessarily love for the Masters, but it's that sort of case where as long as you get to check the rules of your ticket, if it's no action as long as he doesn't play, that's definitely something where it could be worth a flyer where you're like, listen, there's no harm, no foul. If he doesn't make it, I'm going to get my money back. But if he makes it, his price is going to be much shorter than what I'm being offered right now because he's going to have to play better in order just to get into the Masters field.
One of the best things about our show is that we have a lot of new bettors that, are just living in states that just started to legalize gambling, and they're trying to figure out what sports they like to bet on. They know what sports they like to watch. Golf usually isn't one of those sports. It can be a little niche in terms of the spectator, but in terms of the betting angle, Will, I think it's one of my favorite sports to bet on. The matchups, the way that the field is structured with the odds. If you're a new bettor and you've never bet on golf before, what would your advice be to that person if they're trying to pick up the golf betting sphere for the first time this week and hopefully this season?
Yeah, come to the head-to-head market. I think that's something where if you're used to betting NBA, NFL, you have Team A against Team B. I'm rooting for this guy. I'm rooting against this guy. That is the absolutely best, comparison with golf. I know it's sometimes hard for new bettors to get, to wrap their head around not only the futures market, but just the win market, where I'm placing a bet on Wednesday. I'm not getting paid out until potentially Sunday. I don't really know what I'm rooting for on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But if you get those one round, 2 balls this week, usually it's 3 balls on the PGA Tour, but even just a 72-hole head-to-head where it said, listen, I'm rooting for Patrick Reed, and I hope that Victor Hovland never fixes his driver that broke because, Delta lost it. Those sort of things are definitely good ways for people to maybe have a complimentary card and maybe round out some picks that they've got from other team sports.
One of the things that I'm most excited about this year is the fact that Tiger Woods is back. We saw him obviously play with his son back in December. How do you think that he's going to be able to perform, with his limited schedule? Can he still win? Will he still be able to win?
You can get quickly to the poorhouse by doubting that Tiger Woods is ever going to do anything. I do think, though, it's very interesting. He's had some candid comments in the last few weeks at the Hero World Challenge and at that PNC event where he played with Charlie, where he said, listen, I can't practice like I used to anymore. My game is not going to be as sharp as I've been used to getting it. He knows that best case scenario, we're talking about maybe 5, 6, 8 tournaments a year, and it's not going to be this year because I don't think that he's quite healthy enough. He said as much. He's still months away. I know everyone wants to see him at the Masters, but again, that is a brutally hard golf course just to walk, and that's going to be a really big element for him as he starts to rehab this leg injury. I'm looking much more in July at the Open Championship at St. Andrews, a course where he has won twice. It's a very flat piece of land. It's a course that he knows like the back of his hand. That's potentially a softer landing spot and a tournament that he could really gear up towards, maybe make 1 or 2 starts before then, and something he could target a little bit more easily than the Masters in April. So do I think he's going to win this year? Not necessarily. Again, I'm not rushing out to bet him at 40 or 50 to 1. We see it a lot of places for some of these majors. But I do think down the road, I mean, he's 46, but we have seen him make these sort of comebacks before. I do think that he's going to try and play at least a few times each year. And he has been the guy for the last 20, 25 years that has, like Koepka is trying to do. He has circled the big events and said, these are the events I care about. This is when I want my game to peak. And more often than not, he has gotten his game to peak for those weeks. So it wouldn't surprise me. Maybe he's got one more arrow in the quiver. Maybe not a major, but potentially he could pull something out down the line in the next few months or years.
46 is the new 36, right? So one name, and as I turn 36 in about a month, I'm hoping that 36 is the new 26. I think one name that I'm looking at this week that I like, and I'm curious your thoughts, is Justin Thomas. Not quite at the top of the leaderboard, but kind of right there with John Rahm as a favorite for this tournament. He's won here before, ton of podium finishes here. His top 5 is around plus 160. What are your thoughts on JT this week? And also for the season, kind of a weird year for him last year. Yeah. Finished outside the top 15 in all 4 majors, which is very rare for Justin. And I think overall this might be a bounce back season for him.
Yeah, definitely a mixed bag last year for JT. He did get the win at the Players' Championship at Sawgrass, and that's certainly a big one for them. But you're right. You think you get that in March, it's going to be a springboard into bigger and better things. And it really never materialized for him. He did make it to the Olympics. That was a big deal for him. But, yeah, I'm with you. I'm bullish on him both this week and moving forward. I think that you have a situation where you've got basically co-favorites with him and Rahm right now. I would much rather take Justin Thomas because, as you mentioned, the course familiarity, his game really suits this place. I think that this is one that he could really be gearing up towards. And so I think that whether it's in a matchup, like we said, the head-to-heads, or potentially if you want to look at an in-play, if maybe he gets off, he shoots a 69 or a 70, which is a solid round, but it's not going to be leading after Thursday, you might be able to get a number that's even a little higher than the 8-1 or so that seems to be around in the pre-tournament market. But definitely he's a guy that I think is going to be in the mix. And if you want to go down that route, if you get a plus money on a top 5 pick this week, again, given the small field, 38 guys, I think that could be a winner by Sunday.
Will, before we let you go, just final thoughts now starting out the PGA Tour 2022, final thoughts heading into this year.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's great. You know, we're going to have, tournament golf every Sunday until basically September. So we're always going to have something to talk about. There are a lot of young guns. I think there's still room to buy some stock on guys like Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland. Sam Burns is absolutely going to be someone that's going to be a force to be reckoned with come major weeks. And I do think that there's still, we saw last year, a lot of the old guard getting back into the winner's circle. I think we could still see a little bit of a renaissance from guys like Adam Scott, Justin Rose, maybe early 40s of marquee guys with major credentials that could still have one more run at things and potentially get back in the mix. So I think it's going to be a fun year, a lot of parity right now.
Adam Scott at Augusta is always a fun. That's always a go-to.
And last, I want to actually get one more because I know you said Xander Schauffele. Is that your bet for this tournament this weekend?
Yeah, I like Xander at 12-1 this week. I think another guy, if you want to go a little further down the card, is Sungjae Im. I've seen him around the 28-1 range, and he's a guy you can get around plus 150 for a top 10. He played very well at this tournament, finished T5 in his debut a couple years back, and he's won. It's funny, you look at this roster and you're like, wait, how did this guy get in? You remember that he dusted the field in Vegas about 2 months ago, had played pretty well in the fall. This is an interesting mix of guys who really didn't do much over the last 3 or 4 months, and other guys like Sungjae Im, who tends to play a lot of golf, doesn't really have a ton of breaks. There's going to be no issue for rust for him, and I think he could come out guns blazing this week.
Will, we so appreciate you coming on the show. So thank you so much. We'll definitely have you on soon in the future. And thank you for taking my side on Hawaii not being on the West Coast.
We'll get Jared a map next time. We'll be all good.
Yeah, give me a map. I'll put it behind next to my Believe sign with Ted Lasso.
Will, thank you. Happy New Year.
Yep.
That was Will Gray, golf betting analyst for NBC Sports Edge Betting. Okay, Jared, before we end the show, we cannot finish without saying our Pickswise 3-star play of the day. Who do we got today?
Well, we gave it out earlier, kind of. This wasn't my favorite of my college basketball plays, but Sam Avalone or Avalone, apologize if I mispronounce his last name, does think North Carolina laying 2 in the hook on the road in South Bend is the play of the day. So go to Pickswise, read about it. I gave you a little bit of a handicap earlier in the show, but I'm sure Sam will add to that with some very insightful knowledge drops. So check out Pickswise.com. Tar Heels laying 2 in the hook tonight at
There are
Notre
like
Dame.
20 plus college basketball games tonight, and out of those 20-ish, you gave 3 bets. And even though it said it was your least of the 3 for you, it is still a really, really good bet tonight. I think
It is
on it, and I think I'm going to tail him. Okay, your play of the day. Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, this is a bittersweet one, but I'm going to fade my alma mater. And again, we talked about it earlier in the show.
Same show. What?
I am objective when it comes to the Nittany Lions. First of all, let's just get this straight right now. I do not have the same affinity for Penn State basketball that I do for Penn State football.
Yeah,
doesn't quite tug on the heartstrings in the same way. I've had some brutal years watching Penn State basketball. Ed DeChellis was the head coach when I was a student there, and they had some really bad years. I called some of those games, and they were awful. But they are not in a good spot tonight against Northwestern. They shot it really well against Indiana the other day. They made 11 out of 22 from 3, and they still only scored 61 points and won by 3. Now they go on the road where they haven't won yet this year in a true road game against a Northwestern team that, they might not be a very sexy team on paper, but the analytics say they're pretty balanced. Top 60 in offensive and defensive efficiency. And again, true road game for the Knicks coming off of a tight win that they probably shouldn't have won. And Northwestern, who hadn't been shooting it that well against Michigan State, I think they bounce back at home in this game. They've covered a bunch lately, except for that one game against Sparty in their last matchup. So I'm going to lay 5.5 with Northwestern tonight at home against Penn State.
I like it. Going up against your alma mater. That's when you know it's a real one. I
just hope Northwestern doesn't win by 4 or 5 and I lose the bet and Penn State loses. If I lose this bet, I hope Penn State wins.
That would suck. That would actually be like a double-edged sword. Like just
that would suck.
Taking you out from both sides. My best bet of the day, obviously, I have to get my ice picks in for today. Not only 3 games on the card tonight, but I really like the Blues versus the Penguins. Penn's 3-way money line. I was trying to find the best value for the game tonight, and my best bet, Penn's 3-way money line at +110. The Pens are riding an 8-game winning streak right now. St. Louis is coming off of the Winter Classic, and no team has collected more points since November 18th than the Penguins. They're 13-2-1 during that stretch. That's pretty good last time I checked, and they've had 27 points. They did give up 2 goals in their first game back after the COVID layoff, but before that, they've only given up 1.4 goals per game in their prior 7 games. The Blues they've won 4 straight on home ice. The Blues have won 6 of their last 10 in Pittsburgh, but they are 2-7 this year in their last 9 road matches. The Penguins have won 4 straight against Western Conference opponents. I think they're going to ride that momentum, come out on top. Penn's 3-way money line. They're going to do it in regulation at +110. Love the plus money value that I'm getting for that. And they've been strong this entire season. Well, I guess since like mid-November, they've been exceptionally strong. So taking it to Pittsburgh, baby. You love to see it. Okay.
3-way money lines. We're going to do a discussion about this.
I used to just bet just straight up money line. I like the 3-way because you get a little bit extra value. And I like finding my bets at plus money.
Well, hold on. I got to find this text because I was talking. Dan Posner and I had an in-depth discussion about this last night and this morning. So to me, the 3-way money lines are better than the 1.5s. Listen to this stat. NHL favorites have lost just 4 games in regulation over the last 7 days. 41 games they've lost just 4 times in regulation. So if you're betting a favorite, the 3-way money line gives you a little bit of extra juice than just betting the straight money line. And the numbers say that they're winning at a very high percentage. So
I like that.
3-way money lines, the wave of the future in hockey betting. Not really the wave of the future. It's been around for a long time. But, compared to the way of the present. Compared to the puck line, I think they offer great value. And we can dive into this further down the road. But even the -2.5 puck lines might be a little intriguing, sprinkle worthy